2014 was the warmest year on record. This, according to the world's leading climate monitoring agencies. Personally, I wish it was a lot warmer. I don't actually remember it being all that warm, but hey, I'm all about the warming. And because of this, of course, the spin is ramping up among environmentalists and those politicians who will try anything and use anything in order to sell you on why they have to raise a tax to save Mother Earth, which will do nothing of the sort, but will end up paying through the nose. Let's bring in Lori Goldton, because we've been talking about this an awful lot. And this whole carbon tax issue, or carbon pricing, or however you want to call it, doesn't get a lot of attention until you actually dumb it down as to what it actually means. So folks like you, Rex Murphy, have had some really interesting articles on it saying, you know, this is going to crush us.
Well, the real-world experience simply shows that carbon taxes don't work. Norway's had a carbon tax since 1991. It's independent government researchers, Statistics Norway, looked at it a number of years ago and said, no, this isn't working. It isn't lowering emissions in any significant way. The other way you can do it is cap and trade. That's essentially a stock market. The government auctions off permits to industry for the right to emit carbon dioxide. Like carbon credit allows you to emit 1 ton of carbon dioxide. The biggest one there, it's cap and trade emissions trading in Europe, the emissions trading scheme. It's just been a disaster. It's been overwhelmed by fraud.
$287 billion
well,
cost?
The Swiss banking giant UBS just issued a report to its clients saying that their determination is that carbon trading has basically resulted in a $287 billion loss of wealth in Europe to investors. And if they had just taken that money and actually replaced coal plants with new coal plants or with natural gas coal plants, they could have dropped the emissions by half. Instead, we've wasted $287 billion basically on a kind of Ponzi scheme.
Right, and so this is what it becomes. It's like you want us to throw all this money at it, but what's it going to solve?
Well, it's interesting.
I mean, you take like Ontario. We don't have a huge pollution problem. We've got nuclear energy. We don't have coal plants here.
Well, the government would argue that the Liberal government would say that was their big initiative, that they replaced coal plants with wind and solar. They didn't. Wind and solar can't replace. What they actually used was nuclear and natural gas. Natural gas is at least. So the point is, look, there are all kinds of practical things we could do. We could be making sure our nuclear supplies globally are worldwide. We could be making sure that no nuclear plant in North America has ever cost anyone their lives. There are problems in other countries. They don't have our system, and they don't have, and that means we have to be careful about that.
And maintain and put money into.
And then natural gas. Natural gas, all kinds of experts saying natural gas is the bridge until we get technologies that actually can replace fossil fuels. Natural gas is the cleanest. So there are things you can do, but how do you get more natural gas to replace coal? You frack. What do we say in Canada? Oh, you can't frack. So basically, the problem is that on the facts, like put aside the global warming debate, right? Yes, a number of the monitoring agencies say that 2014 was the warmest year on record. Let's just be clear, that's in the 135-year record of temperature data. It's not the 4.5 billion year history of the Earth. Satellite measurements tell us a different story, that there's been a plateau for about 18 years, and that 2014 is not the warmest, and all the scientists fight about that. But put all that aside. Let's say the science is right, and we are in a period of abnormal global warming caused by fossil fuels. Okay, none of the solutions you people are proposing to us work. None of the things they're going to do in Paris, which will be a $100 billion a year climate mitigation fund paid for by people like Canadian taxpayers, 2 countries that are the major source of emissions in the developing world, like China and India. Not going to work. We know it's not going to work. Carbon taxes, as Kathleen Wynne is, and they've done in BC, that's very nice, but they don't lower emissions. They simply, carbon taxes just means we pay more money. And then politicians screw up the implementation so much that it doesn't do any good.
But there are a lot of people that will buy into this spin. More will buy into it than won't.
Well, look, the simple thing that, if I was going to boil it down, I'd say what Kathleen Wynne is going to do in Ontario, because she needs money and because gas prices are falling, is she's going to take back some of that money for herself by putting an extra tax on gasoline. And people will go, well, it was $1.35 a year ago, so it's not so bad if it's only $1.07 now. But of course, then gas prices will go back up. But the real area I focused in the last few years is just trying to explain to people, none of the solutions they are telling you are the solution. all they are is money grabs. They're money grabs by the government, they're money grabs by big business, and they're what I call big green. Big green is happy for two reasons. They get to sit as more advisors on more government panels and make more money, and big greens are really like the Suzukis of the world, the Al Gores of the world. They want to control how you and I and our audience lives.
And even when the facts don't prove true, they still make billions of dollars and they still draw the narrative.
To pontificate about, you must restrain your lifestyles, you must fly less, you must do less. I'm not going to do it.
As I do.
Al Gore, I mean, how many homes does he have?
Yeah.
Sold Current TV for an $80 million profit to Al Jazeera, which is backed by Qatar, which is an oil and gas Arab Emirates. That's some of the biggest gas supplies in the world. So, you know, if you just look at how people like that behave, they don't behave like they believe the world's coming to an end from global warming. And frankly, the world isn't coming to an end from global warming. And frankly, if you're going to worry between global warming and global cooling, the one you'd worry about is global cooling.
For sure.
Because that's the one that, see, our planet is basically a frozen ball that in the 4.5 billion years of the Earth, it basically thaws out from time to time.
Sure.
Right? We're in one of those thaws, thank heaven, or the Earth would be buried in a mile of ice.
Yeah, the bottom line is, people can talk a lot, they can talk a big game, but at the end of the day, they're not really willing to give up what we have, because unless you're willing to live in dark without TV, without your iPod, without heat, then you're not doing anything to help.
Well, and the other thing is then ask people how much they're prepared to pay. And I mean, one of the smartest persons I ever heard, one of my readers said to me, he's an immigrant, he came here, he established a number of businesses, he's successful, you know, he's quite wealthy. And he said, look, I'm all for preserving the environment. Give me choices that make sense to me, right? Give me choices that I can do my business more economically by putting in some upfront capital, and I'll do it, right? Give me a car that works as efficiently as a gas engine car, and I'll buy it. But it has to be price competitive, right? And so that's what eventually is going to happen. Technologies are going to appear. Fracking was one of them that are going to lower the cost lower the cost of energy, right? So like lower the cost of natural gas, right? So it'll fall low enough. People will go, hey, you know what? It's cheaper than coal. Let's start changing our plants. But you have to do it on an economic basis. And the problem is most people who are scientists in the nonprofit environmental movement, unfortunately, they're political scientists. They're not real scientists. Yeah. The real scientists, like Dr. Patrick Moore, co-founder of Greenpeace, broke with that organization when they wanted to ban chlorine. Yes. And he went, wait a minute, we're talking about an element of the earth. What are you talking about? So the problem is that you have in this movement politicians who, on the whole, have no idea what I think we discussed. Yeah. To me, there's two politicians in Canada who understand what we're talking about. One is Stephen Harper. The other is Elizabeth May. They're on opposite sides of the spectrum, but at least they know what they're talking about. Yeah. When I listen to Justin Trudeau talk about
can't mistake those two.
Climate change, it's just like, well, okay, you're being told what to say by Gerald Butts, who is your principal secretary, who used to be with the World Wildlife Fund, who was responsible for advising McGuinty about the mess ingredients coming to Ontario. But it's basically that you just have no idea what you're talking about. None.
So, you know, we've been on this story now in our media on the sun side of things for a while.
Yeah, I've been about 6 years.
But I'm now noticing that others are jumping in. Is this going to become a big problem for Kathleen Wynne when the pushback starts, or is she just determined to push this thing through? Because it's going to raise not just at the gas tank, so people can handle a dime at the gas tank until, of course, oil prices go up and they say, hold on a second. Well, but groceries, everything you buy.
She's relying on urban voters, like the typical urban voter in downtown Toronto, who thinks it's terrible that people in rural countries, in rural communities, don't want wind turbines and those NIMBYs. And yet, in those communities where in downtown Toronto, where if you repair your veranda, you've got to get 37,000 permits. Yeah. So that she's relying on sort of the guilt-ridden, well-to-do liberal elites, right? Who always feel guilty about being born. Yeah. One of the problems is, you hit a good point. I've told the Tories for years, go on this issue. Hydro prices are out of control. This is what people care about. And explain to them that what's going on is not helping the environment, not helping the planet. It's simply making government and industry richer. Yeah. And I think some of the candidates are starting to do that. But you know why? They're scared. They're scared they're going to be called they don't care about the planet. Yeah. Right? Well, you know, the facts are on the side of people who say, listen, all the stuff they're telling you about carbon taxes, cap and trade, it doesn't work. Yeah. We can show how it doesn't work.
But it goes to show you how powerful the green movement is.
So if you want to solve it, here are the real things we could do, none of which we're doing.
Yeah, interesting. All right, Lori, we'll leave it there.